Yesterday, there was an attack. Colorado, here on American soil, right? No, in America. Colorado, an attack at this march for Israeli hostages, okay? Boulder, Colorado. A man used a makeshift flamethrower, they're describing it as. And 8 people hospitalized. Terrible stuff. And reports of an incendiary device being thrown. You heard of the term Molotov cocktail. But 8 hospitalized, 2 seriously. 4 men, 4 women who range in age from 52 to 88. They were at an event called Run for Their Lives to call for attention about the hostages that were taken by Hamas on October 7th, okay? Witnesses say a man threw an incendiary device into the crowd and that he yelled, "Free Palestine," according to special agent in charge of the FBI's Denver field office.
As far as the investigation itself, we're still trying to verify and confirm some video, but it appears to show a significant portion of the incident as it happened. There's an individual that's taken into custody. He's a white male.
White male? And so that was early reports, okay? Let me show you the white man in question. The suspect was identified as Mohammed Sabri Soliman of Colorado Springs. Mr. Soliman, 45 years old. And you can maybe forgive the mainstream media just for a moment, right? He even said he didn't know. But he was taken into custody after witnesses pointed him out, booked on multiple felony charges. A spokeswoman for the Department of Homeland Security said that Mr. Soliman was in the United States illegally. Take that one in. Having entered in August 2022 on a tourist visa from Egypt, stayed past the visa's expiration in February 2023. He filed for asylum in September 2022. So this guy was here illegally, overstayed visas, overstayed work permit. The FBI is saying that he said Free Palestine and a number of other things. Here's some of that footage of Mohammed, of who they're saying is Mohammed Soleimani, holding 2 receptacles of a clear liquid. And you have to assume maybe those are the incendiary devices or what. I mean, we're starting off here in the middle. And that this guy, whatever he's yelling about, whoever's in the crowd yelling back to him, is, I think, attempting to calm him down, saying, we can't do anything about what you're yelling about. He's saying, you can't. And I think the man even responds, you can. We're here, brother. We're here. We can't do nothing about that.
We can't do nothing.
We can.
You can.
We have to end Zionists.
We have to end Zionists, he says.
I'm taking video right now.
It sounds like he says that. You see there's smoke and like burn marks on the ground here. I think you can almost see the lick of flames, in fact, coming out of that patch of grass right next to him. You see that? It looks like a little lick of flames. A little tongue of fire, and I don't think that's the spirit, or some kind of spirit. LGBT flag in the background.
And for us,
Well, we can't do it when he's got Molotov cocktails in there.
The guy sounds like the cameraman maybe says, well, we can't do anything when he has Molotov cocktails. He's holding these dangerous incendiary devices. And that's pretty much the dealio with the guy there. Now, on Sunday, Federal Bureau of Investigation confirmed on Monday that Soliman, a resident of El Paso, was arrested and was the main suspect behind this attack. During an interview, Soliman admitted to watching YouTube videos on how to make Molotov cocktails, purchased the materials to make them. He stated he wanted to kill all Zionists, wished all Zionists dead, and said he would repeat the attack if given the opportunity. That's coming from Jerusalem Post. A little bit more on Soliman. It's a terrible attack, and initial thoughts on an attack like this, as I've kind of been saying, is it shouldn't even be happening on American soil. These endlessly atomized fights of foreigners, honestly. You have India, Pakistan, Israel, Gaza, Ukraine, Russia. Mr. Netanyahu said, this attack was aimed against peaceful people who wished to express their solidarity with the hostages held by Hamas simply because they were Jews. And I'm looking at this attack and I'm seeing some of the responses. I'm seeing a number of I'm seeing some commentary surrounding this that really revolves around this notion of never again, so to speak. Like, check this out. This is Stop Anti-Semitism, an account on X. that runs the social media account for this organization known as Stop Anti-Semitism. You're somewhat familiar with them. They're not too unlike organizations like the ADL and maybe even the SPLC. But, you know, their thing is about stopping anti-Semitism. And they made a post about this attack, and it reads like this: a Holocaust survivor was just firebombed at a Jewish event by pro-Palestinian extremists. We are beyond the point of warnings. This is terrorism. The pro-Palestine movement must be called what it is. First, you have to understand this concept, right? What they're getting at when they're saying we are beyond the point of warning. What they're warning about, and you've heard this refrain that comes from the anti-Semitism folks, never again, is essentially another Holocaust, another World War II. And I'm sure you're somewhat familiar with that period in time. Some pretty nasty things happened, okay, to a lot of people, including Jews. Why is it interesting to me? Because, how do I put this? There's this notion of never again, like I said, means to avoid anything like World War II, anything like a Holocaust. They want to avoid that. Same here, by the way. I wouldn't want such a thing happening. Let me just put that out there. But there's a couple of things about this diagnosis that it's not just wrong, it's something vulgar about this diagnosis that now there's a rise in anti-Semitism that must be stopped. And this attack is part of this. See, the thing is, this is not just popping off. This attack with Mohammed Suleiman, this attack, even the earlier attack when those two embassy officials were murdered by some guy with a last name Rodriguez. These attacks are not just popping off because of some random Jewish hate just randomly surfacing up. This is not just just a group of people like this something is run like a fever running through a population, just randomly like, you know what, I hate Jewish people. Like, no, that's not what's happening. This was an Egyptian illegal. This was an Egyptian national illegally in America, mad about the wars that are happening now. These wars are happening they have a temporal address. You understand what I mean by that? Meaning they're happening now between people that consider themselves a certain identity. Some call themselves Israeli and Jewish, others call themselves Palestinian and Muslim. This anti-Semitism, these attacks, again, popping off not because of some random Jewish hate, but because actual temporal conflicts that are happening are popping off today. And then guess what? The people who care about these temporal conflicts are in America. You understand what's happening? So you have a war that's happening now, and then this man that is here thanks to our government. And guess what happens with people? People have identities. They consider themselves part of a group, politically, religious, etc., racially. And guess what happens with these people and their identities? These are conflicts of people. These are conflicts of people. And then these people are in this country. And then who let them in, right? You remember that Jewish man? I think he was Jewish, that stabbed that Palestinian child in Illinois. Do you remember that? I mean, the alleged motive, according to the law enforcement and all that, is because of this conflict that popped off with Hamas and Israel. That's why this Joseph Suba back in like a year or 2 years ago did that in Illinois. This is a conflict of people and what they believe. Understand, right? Not just like a random anti-Semitism that's just like bubbling out of the ground. You understand? Why is that important to me? Why am I making a point of that? Consider for a moment this cult, the cult of ism. I'm going to call it here, the cult of ism. It's the same cult that created the word racism. Why was that word created? Why was that word taught to us? It was all for what? So that racism can never happen again. You understand? We were taught that racist things happen and that America was racist and slavery happened, all these things happened so that we may never commit racism again, right? Okay, they created a monster. This same monster has sided with Hamas. Consider the words they use, Zionist, etc. the words they use on Jewish people and people who support Israel. These are the same people who see the Jews as a colonialist force. These are the same people who see white people in Europe and all these countries as a enduring colonialism. Has even caused and is as even the driving force of this so-called anti-Semitism in the first place. Consider for a moment that leveraging a victimhood status, saying that that's saying that a group requires a particular protection actually brings hate on them on a larger scale. It has quite the opposite effect, actually. Consider that reality. Now, put the Jews in this situation, and bada bing, you now have what I think is happening.